open the Tuesday, January 28th, regular planning board meeting and public hearings. We are being recorded and we might be going out live as well. First up are administrative items. The first one is Instigator Enterprises, Inc., file number 20-002 SP-FF, request to extend the special permit approval for flexible frontage for the parcel described as map 37, parcel 9, located between 323 and 337 Pine Hill Road. So, do we have somebody here, or is it?
We do. We have Jonathan Buckman.
Okay.
Good evening, board. Jonathan Buckman here. I'm trying to get on the internet up here, but we had a microburst up in the western Wayland area where I live, and everything's gone down, power, internet, everything. So I'm sitting in my office on my cell phone. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good evening, board. Jonathan Buckman, Banner Construction Company. I'm in front of you tonight just to request a 3-year extension on the special permit that was granted in 2020 for map 37 lot 9. I have signed a purchase and sales agreement on the property. I'm going to be closing on February 19th on the property. And at the moment I'd like to just get permission from you with the current owner's approval, which you have a letter that I sent in. He has signed it to take over the permit the board has approved. It actually expired in 2023, but with the governor's act, she extended all special permits, comprehensive permits for an additional 2 years. So it's good until this April 30th. And when I came down to look at this property, a friend of mine lives at 401 Pine Hill Road. I ended up coming across this property. Westport is a beautiful town. I'm going to be purchasing this property to build a small contemporary farmhouse, hopefully with a small barn for myself and my family. I'd like to just have this permit extended for 3 years until April 30th, 2020 by your board. I was not able to, under the terms of our agreement with the sellers, to do any due diligence or get any contingencies, to do any type of wetland delineation, perk tests, meet with any engineers, do any of the engineering work. So I ended up spending a couple of days talking to Michael at the planning board. I spoke to your board of health. I did my own due diligence and have gone ahead and will be buying the property. So by granting me and the current owner the extension, I'm going to be bringing back down there the wetland engineer who did the previous plan, redelineated everything because it was done in 2019. Perk tests were done, I think, in 2015. They're still good, but I need to, look at what has been done, what you have granted, and then I will hire a local engineering company that works, in Westport. Come back down in front of you once I know exactly what I can and can't do on the property based on this special permit, and then we can revisit you with an actual plan with solid engineering and all the information that you'll need to look at. I'll have in front of you to get my project approved so that I can then move forward and build what is approved.
Okay, so you have a purchase and sale to buy lot 9?
I do. I've signed the purchase and sales. They signed it. I put the deposits have all gone. We closed February 19th. And as I said, we are going to be moving forward on it. And I will have it under my ownership as of hopefully February 19th is the date that we have set to close, based on a clean title and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you propose to build in the designated building envelope there?
At the moment, I'm going to look at what, There is, so let me back up a little bit. There are obviously wetlands on the property. You know, it's a more of a complicated lot because of the wetlands. You've got marsh. There is a buildable area on it. I've gone back and looked at all the previous by right, what somebody did, and the previous owner before the seller I'm buying from had the right to build, I think, 3 houses down there in a subdivision without going for the special permit. I'm just looking to do the one house for myself with a small barn, small house, small barn, to, you know, go into the best location outside the flood zone, with, you know, within the 100-foot buffer, but about 25 feet away, will meet all your conservation requirements. And I spoke to the head of your conservation commission as well. We'll then be coming in and doing a notice of intent and ANRAD if need be. And then, as I say, I will be presenting to you, you know, if I'm going to make any changes to this current approval, I will come back in front of you once I have a solid plan and have been able to do my, you know, engineering work and figure out where the best place to put the house is, the best place to get the views and the use of the property, as well as, you know, the location we can put it.
Okay, and the access to where you're gonna build is gonna be the same as indicated on this plan, or not?
You know, at the moment, you know, lot 9 has its own frontage of 100 feet. There's an existing path that goes in. I walked it 2 weekends ago. It's very dense, a lot of thorn, a lot of trees, a lot of everything. Could only get down the right side. That's where they're showing me access right now. I'm planning on using that. I haven't sat down with an engineering company down there. I know there is a right of way, which I don't know if that's an alternative access point because there are other houses on the other side of it. I'm not going to more than likely use that. I can't give you a definitive on it, but at the moment, I'm planning on coming through my own property, right from where the 100-foot frontage is, down the same entrance. I'd obviously like to clean up some of the brush and thorn, put in natural vegetation for myself and the neighbors. To do that, I am a builder developer up in the western area. I've built Martha's Vineyard for myself. I've built projects all over the state. And I just want to make it fit into the current look. It's a beautiful farm area. And I want to, you know, it'll look like it's been there forever. It's going to be a house that will be more than likely below the road level where it is now in that footprint, because I think that is the footprint based on what I've seen from the plans. But until I delineate the wetlands again, come through and see where I can build outside that flood zone, which is a zone AE, you kind of limited to where you can put the house, and where they put the house was probably the location to put it. Without being able to have come down there and done any, you know, engineering work or use the, you know, the wetland engineer that did this previously, I wasn't able to. I can't tell you if it's somewhere else, but for now, by approving the same, you know, plan that you've done before, you're going to extend what's approved for 3 years, and then I will come back in front of you with my plan and show you what I'm going to do once I can figure out what the best location is to put the house. But the way it looks right now, the very narrow entrance, 100 feet, you know, when you build a house and with the, you know, the views and whatever you need, the location that they showed the footprint is most probably the best place to put it. Based on the topography, it's a sloping lot, it'll be below the road, you probably won't see it in the location that you've already approved. And for us, that will be the best because it's private. It'll be a good entrance coming in. We'll keep it all natural, make it look like it's been there forever. Nobody will even see it in that location that you've approved. Plus, we'll then get the use of the property all the way down, you know, to the water.
Okay, Michael? Or Dia?
I think Dio's going to give this one a shot.
Yes.
Yes, as Mr. Buckman explained, the extension's been requested because the current owner didn't begin construction and because the permit expires on April 20th, 2025. And so the current owner has signed on to the agreement and COPPA. The planning staff recommends approving the extension.
Okay, is there some special reason you need a 3-year extension?
Well, at the moment, I'm not planning to build for another year to a year and a half because the architects that I use are all back up with work for the next 9 to 12 months. I've got to come down. I'm going to be out of the country in South Africa through March. I've got to get down there. You don't perk now in the winter. I'm going to try and perk in the spring, summer. Again, even though I've got pre-approved perks that are there, depending if they're in the same location or not. And it's going to take some time to put this together. And I'm not in a rush to build the house, but it'll definitely be within the next, 2 to 3 years is what I'm planning to do. I'm in the middle of a very big project up in the town of Weston. It's an affordable housing project that I'm building. I've been involved for about 6 years on that. And I'd like to just get that done here, and then I'll end up concentrating and coming on down to build this small house and barn for myself.
Okay,
One motion, Mr.
please, yes.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the request for a 3-year extension of the special permit for flexible frontage for Instigator Enterprises, Inc. The extension will change the permit expiration date from April 20th of 2025 to April 20th of 2028.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment. I just want to make sure that you understand that when we extended the special permit, you are purchasing with the special permit conditions as they exist now.
Absolutely.
All right.
And as I said to you, I'm sure I have the right to come back into you if I can show you a better plan. Something else I can, that I might come up with that we might need to change or not change, I don't know. I will come back in front of you for your permission and obviously work with you. And if it's better for, the town of Westport, your board, and the neighbors, I'll end up, we'll present it to you and get your review on it.
Okay. All those in
It's
favor?
approved.
Yeah, you voted.
Okay. All right, next.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is 1180 American Legion Highway, file number 24-033 SPA-LID. We need to endorse the decision for site plan and low-impact development approvals for a 39,200 square foot storage facility at the parcel described as map 28, lot 32, 32F, H, and O.
The board made a motion to approve this in the last planning board meeting. We just need to get your signatures on the amended decision.
Okay, next is Burks v. Twin, or 5 Twin, file number 24-07 SPA-MAJ. We need to close out and release consultant review funds plus interest. Applicant has requested to withdraw the application without prejudice.
This will need to wait until 6:45 for the scheduled public hearing. At that time, we'll have the board vote to accept or deny the request to withdraw the application without prejudice, and then close out and release the consultant review funds. But that'll have to wait till a little bit later in the meeting.
This is part of a public hearing?
Not the request to close and release the consultant review funds. That would come after the public hearing. There is a public hearing today for this proposal at 6:45.
I don't see it.
I don't see that on the agenda.
The agenda was revised and earlier
So it's-
in the week.
I don't
Okay.
see it on either.
But it's on the one that went to the We're checking.
She's going to get you a revised agenda.
Okay. Okay, so we'll put that off. Next is coastal hearing, file number 19-015 SPA, endorsed Form O for full release of surety. So,
Similar story. This was, the board did make a motion to partially, wait, this is for coastal healing?
yes,
So the motion in the last meeting was for the board to fully release its surety for this project.
plus interest.
Right, so we just need your signature on the form.
Okay. Next is Meadowbrook Farms Phase 3, file number 13-002C, endorsed Form O, partial release of surety.
Similar story, the board voted on this at the last meeting. There's some as-built work that needs to be updated, as well as for the landscaping to establish into this development. So the partial release is from a surety of $110,000, $226 to $8,700 for the remaining work associated with landscaping and the as-built plan. So we just need your signature on that form as well.
Okay, next is the 6:15 public hearing for Francis Estates, file number 24-037C-SPA-LID. The applicant is proposing to construct a 9-lot definitive residential subdivision requiring site plan and approval and low-impact development approval on the parcel described as map 68, lot 7, between 50 and 58 Charlotte White Road.
Good evening. My name is Tom Morris with Dean's Consulting Engineers. So we came in front of you with a preliminary design for this. What happened was that this was previously approved, I believe is a 12-lot open space subdivision.
Correct.
And the current owner now wants to change it to conventional. So we redesigned it originally for 10 lots, which is what we could fit in. But then we came back and changed it to 9 because we wanted to stay underneath the inclusionary housing threshold. So we have a 9-lot conventional subdivision. There are, if you want to go to the next sheet, please.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sizable wetland system on the east side, which ends up going to a culvert which crosses Main Road. We're keeping all of our work outside the 25-foot buffer as required. You see kind of the peninsula that sticks into the wetland. We're going to be sticking in some drainage in that area. If you go 2 sheets ahead, you can see the layout here. We have 3 basins on the lot, one up front, right off Charlotte White, which is an infiltration basin with an overflow that goes to the back, detention basin. And then all the way on the south, there's another infiltration basin which takes flow from the cul-de-sac. And that handles all of that flow. It doesn't overflow to the other basin. We have recently gotten review comments from MBL. There are several things which we have to revise already. We haven't started any work on that, but we wanted to discuss that with you tonight. Possible options of how to move forward with this, and see if you had any additional comments on anything you'd like to see changed.
We do have additional comments, and a couple of things. The planners are going to go through a whole list of things that they require. And so this is an amendment to the open space residential development approval? Or is this a new subdivision?
It's a new subdivision.
Then,
It's completely different design than what was done before.
then do you have to extinguish the old subdivision?
I'm not sure if the permit still active? Because it's been several years, I believe, since it was approved.
I think it was by right. I'm not sure if it was by right at that time or not, but the other question is that subdivision was registered at the Registry of Deeds. And you're not referencing any of those existing lot lines.
Yeah, that
on
was
this
one
plan.
of MBL's comments, so we can absolutely add those to the existing.
Right, and then and it's a question that I don't know the answer to, but maybe you could help us figure it out. Because it was registered at the Registry of Deeds as an open space residential development with 12 lots, it was also subject to inclusionary housing for one lot, I believe. And since that is registered, it seems that's legal. I don't know if that carries forward. If you then later change the number of lots, does that get you out of the requirement to have one inclusionary housing lot?
I would have to look into that. I don't know the answer.
And nor do we, but it seems like something that needs to be resolved.
Right.
And it is important for Westport to add to their inclusionary housing, to add to their affordable housing inventory. We're just finishing up our housing production plan, and we sorely need those kinds of houses, especially with the price of lots and houses today. So those are two issues. Is the road exactly the same as the other plan?
No, it's generally in the same shape, but it is not exactly the same.
So you couldn't do this as A&Rs because it's not the same road?
Correct.
So
Well, it's not a public road, so you can't do the A&R off of it.
You can do A&Rs off of a private road, but it doesn't exist, so it exists on paper still. It hasn't been changed. And so the last big question I have is, do you have to file an amendment to the old subdivision to do this, since it's already been registered for the Registry of Deeds? Or are you free to just come in with a new subdivision that forgets the old one? I just don't know the answer to that either.
Okay. I believe are you asking that as far as the registry would be concerned, or?
No, as we're concerned.
Okay.
Because if we have a significant change to a subdivision, there's a process to go through to do that, not just file a new subdivision plan.
Correct. Okay.
So that you file a major change or on the subdivision that exists. And because this is an open space subdivision, our first one in town, and I'm sorry to see it go, I don't know the answer to this question. Is it the same as a regular subdivision, and would it be something that you have to file an amendment to that subdivision, or is it you just file that you're gonna forget that subdivision? I just have no idea.
Okay.
So I think it calls for some legal work to figure that out.
Sure.
So the planners have a whole list of things.
I'll start with the staff findings and then move on to some of the consulting engineers' findings. Actually, I'll start with the consulting engineers' findings, just so I follow the report numerically.
Sure.
1, the existing path off Charlotte White Road on the eastern side of the site's frontage is not shown on the plans and should be added. 2, the existing conditions plan should list the parcel, owner, and deed information within the plan view. 3, the vertical datum should be noted on the existing conditions plan. 4, no benchmark information is provided on the plans. 5, the wetlands boundary shown is from an order of resource delineation issued by the Westport Conservation Commission in 2007. Therefore, the wetland delineation is no longer valid, and the wetlands boundary should be delineated by a qualified botanist for review and approval by the Westport Conservation Commission. 6, the plan scale noted in the title block of the lighting plan is incorrect and should be updated to 60 scale. 7, snow storage locations should be shown on the plans. 8, the turnaround outside and inside roadway dimensions and pavement width should be labeled on the plans. The proposed Cape Cod berm should be labeled on the plans. MBL recommends extending the Cape Cod berm along Charlotte White Road on the eastern side of the proposed roadway intersection to the limits of the existing Cape Cod berm and the Charlotte White Road. 9, the connection of the existing path to the cemetery and the new proposed roadway should be designed. Any paths to be removed and vegetated should be indicated on the plans. 10, the portion of the existing stone wall along Charlotte White Road that is required to be removed for the proposed roadway entrance should be labeled on the plans. 11, the grading and drainage plan should show drainage structure and pipe labels either in the plan view or on a table. 12, all proposed wells must be at least 10 feet from the proposed property lines. It appears the location of the well on Lot 1 may need to be adjusted. 13, manhole DMH2 does not appear to be constructible as shown. A larger diameter structure may be required to allow for all 3 pipes to enter at the same elevation. Typically, a minimum of a ½ foot of sidewall between the outside of the pipes is needed for the structure to be considered structurally sound. 14, manhole DMH8 also does not appear to be constructible as shown. A larger diameter structure may be required due to the size of the pipes and their invert elevations. 15, for manholes DMH6 and DMH7, the rim elevations of the manholes do not match the site grading. Please update the rim elevations to match the existing grades. 16, many drainage structures appear to be below the groundwater elevations, such as manhole DMH7, based on the test pit log 21-D. The design of the drainage structures should include measures for anti-flotation if needed. 17, all double catch basins shall be labeled as such on the grading and drainage plan and roadway profile plan. '18, all pipe slopes should be labeled on the roadway profile plan. 19, all proposed grading should be shown on the plan of the roadway profile plan. 20, several vertical curves need to be added to the roadway profile between stations 6+50 and 10+0. The vertical curves shall be labeled on the profile. 21, The elevation table for the infiltration basins on the basin cross-section detail lists incorrect values for Basin 2 spillway and berm elevation. These should be updated to match HydroCAD and the grading and drainage plan. 22, the spillway detail for Basin 2 lists incorrect values for the basin bottom and width of the overflow spillway. These should be updated to match HydroCAD and the grading and drainage plan. 23, a proposed cross-section detail of the vegetated swale should be added to the plans. The cross-section should include the proposed seed mixture to utilize in the swale. 24, street lines per subdivision bylaw section 4A1I are required to have a rounded curve at the corner having a radius of not less than 25 feet. A waiver should be requested from this section of the regulations as there is no radius provided on the western side of the proposed road at the intersection with Charlotte White Road. Just note that Charlotte White Road. Just note that waivers are to the discretion of the planning board exclusively. 25, subdivision section VC1F. Fences should be proposed around the infiltration basins and detention basin. Gates should be included for access to the basins for maintenance. 26, subdivision section 5D9. Catch basins should provide adequate disposal of the surface water. The gutter inlet sizing calculations provided in the stormwater report. Catch basins CB4A, CB-7A, and CB-8 do not accept all flows from the 25-year storm. The catch basins should be sized to handle flows from the 25-year storm event with no overflow. 27, subdivision section 5D12. The proposed vegetated swale on Lot 9 should be located at least 10 feet from a abutting property line. Basins should be located at least 50 feet away from abutting property lines. This includes all components of the basin, such as the 15-foot berm around the top of the basins. Infiltration basins 1 and 2 should be revised accordingly. 28, there are no test pits in the detention basin footprint. While this basin is not being used for infiltration, test pits are required to confirm the groundwater elevation, so the basin can be designed not to intercept groundwater. Proposed cut of over 5 feet is shown in portions of the basin, and the test pits performed at the site indicated shallow groundwater. Staff recommends that the applicant perform the witness test pits with the consulting engineer in the detention basin location to confirm groundwater elevation and soil texture. 29, the test pits performed in the infiltration basins are from 2007. More recent 2023 test pits performed for septic system on Lot 1 indicate sandy loam soils near the 2007 test pits utilized for infiltration basin 1, which had loamy sand soils. Since the test pits in the basin are over 17 years old, the consulting engineer recommends that the applicant perform witness test pits in the basins to confirm groundwater elevation and soil texture to confirm infiltration rates. 30, infiltration basin 1 has a plus or minus 4 slope on the bottom of the basin. Infiltration basin floors are to be designed as flat as possible to promote infiltration. The maximum longitudinal slope allowed for the basin floor is 1% per the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook in Volume 2, Chapter 2. 31, stormwater will be surcharged back into catch basin CB3 and CB4 before spilling over the 4-bay berm into infiltration basin 1. 32, the pre and post development drainage plan should show the map soil boundaries, cover types utilized, and label the time of concentration flow paths. 33, an inlet catchment map should be provided showing the watershed areas of each inlet structure and their flow paths that correspond to the Great Inlet and pipe sizing calculations provided in the stormwater report. 34, the stormwater report notes that all flow will receive a 44% pretreatment through a combination of deep sump hooded catch basins and sediment forebays and 80% total suspended solids removal through the infiltration/detention basins. This is true for the flows to the 2 infiltration basins. However, detention basins do not receive total suspended solids removal credit. 35, since the not all runoff from impervious areas is directed to infiltration basins. Capture area adjustment calculations need to be provided, documenting that a minimum of 65% of impervious areas are directed to the infiltration basins and that they recharge the adjusted minimum recharge volume. 36, drawdown calculations should be submitted documenting that the infiltration basins completely drain within 72 hours. 37, the consulting engineer recommends adding the owner/responsible party's email and phone number to the operations and maintenance plan. 38, the operation and maintenance plan should include measures for removing sediment from the sediment forebays and should be updated as the forebays are proposed to be riprap per the basin cross-section details on the plan set. It should also include measures for the maintenance of the forebay gravel berms and riprap spillways. And 39, the illicit discharge compliance statement provided in the stormwater report needs to be signed by the applicant. And then on to staff findings. 40, and this is per subdivision section 3B, final plans must be stamped by a registered engineer or registered surveyor and registered engineer in the state of Massachusetts. 41, section 3B3C, names of abutters must be added to a plan sheet. 42, 3D, the proposed street name shall be added to the proposed plan sheet. 43, this is section 3B3E, width of main road must be added to a plan sheet. 44, section 3B3J, monuments for proposed lots must be added to the lotting plan. 45, section 5D, the applicant must delineate the extent of stone wall to be removed from the site. The applicant must also include a curb cut from the proposed road to the driveway for cemetery access. The applicant shall provide the planning board easement information to access the cemetery, which shall also be added to the plan notes indicating rights of access. 46, subdivision section 4A1I, the western side of the road intersection with Charlotte White Road must include a 25-foot turn radius. 47, section 4E, the proposal requires an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission. Modifications resulting from their review, such as relocation of drainage areas, will require modification before the planning board. 48, section 5B7, staff recommends denial of the request to waive sidewalks. Sidewalks provide a safe recreational facility for residents of all ages and abilities, particularly those with mobility impairments. The Commission on Disability also recommended denial of this waiver. Should this waiver, if this waiver request is denied, sidewalks in the grass buffer area must be added to the plan set. Should the waiver be approved, the waiver must be added to, or it is included on the first page of the plan, but if it's approved, it has to stay on that plan sheet. 49, section VCD1, the consulting engineer's report states that detention basins do not receive credit for total suspended solids removal, or TSS. The TSS removal rate must be recalculated and modifications made if 44% removal, as required in the subdivision bylaw, is not achieved. 50, section VD12, the swale on lot 9 must be at least 10 feet away from the adjacent property. Both infiltration basins are within 50 feet of abutting property lines. 51, section VI3A, 2 cross sections are shown for a concrete and fiberglass fire tank. The concrete tank cross-section shall be removed as fiberglass is required. 52, and this is from the site plan, the planning board site plan rules and regulations. Regulation 2.2.3B6, total area of wetland resource area must be added to the existing conditions plan sheet, so the total square footage. 53, section 20.6.1C, Street frontage landscape buffer. The applicant must include a landscape buffer of at least 20 feet in width along Charlotte White Road. The buffer area shall be planted with ground cover, low shrubs, 3 feet maximum height, and high branching 6 to 8 feet above ground, shade trees planted at least every 35 feet along the roadway. Plants shall be chosen, planted, and maintained so as not to block the line of sight of drivers entering and exiting the site or at road intersections. 54, site plan section 20.6.1E. A note shall be added to the plan stating that deciduous trees shall be at least 3 inches in caliper as measured 6 inches above the root ball at time of planting. Deciduous trees used for screening shall be expected to reach a height of 20 feet within 10 years of planting. Evergreen trees used for screening shall be a minimum of 8 feet in height at the time of planting. 55, subdivision site plan rules and regulations 20.11. The applicant shall contact the Massachusetts EPA to determine the applicability of the NIPD's permit and provide the EPA's response to the planning board. And I also have some comments from our technical review committee, which is the interdepartmental reviews we do with the fire department, conservation commission, and so on. The fire department expressed no concerns with the proposed development. The Board of Health stated that perk tests have been completed, but the application has yet to submit septic plans. The Commission on Disability, as I noted, recommend that the planning board deny the sidewalk waiver request. And the Conservation Commission stated that the applicant will be required to file an order of conditions for the proposed activity in the buffer zone. The wetland line was determined and approved for the prior development. However, that will need to be updated for this submission. He stated that the NIPD's permit is required and to include public access to the old cemetery on the current property or whatever level of access is defined in the easement to the cemetery. And that's all from the consulting engineer
That's
and
all?
from staff.
Okay, I'm gonna have comments from the board in a minute, but I think we could, deal with the waiver request, first. It is my opinion that we should not accept this waiver or grant this waiver, since we have changed our regulations at the request of the Disabilities Committee. And so all subdivisions of 5 lots or more are required to have sidewalks.
That's fine.
And it just makes sense. So I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So, comments from the board before I open it up to the public?
You should, you got a long list of things you gotta fix.
Yep.
But you really need to pay particular attention to the drainage and stormwater here. I was part of the original review, and we spent a lot of time talking about outfall locations and you know, the groundwater levels and a lot of this, and a lot of the stuff that you're designing around is information that was more than 10 years or so ago. The lot that's on Main Street that used to be part of the subdivision is now cut out. You want to be very careful with the outfall from that basin, not to direct water right into someone's backyard. And you know, so that you want to think carefully about all of that, because this whole site now is draining down towards Main Street or across to the existing homes on Charlotte White. So besides the big punch list of things you have to do, when you look at the drainage, look at it very carefully, because we will look at it carefully.
Yeah, so to speak to that quickly before we move ahead, we are making sure to reduce both rate and volume of runoff leaving the site versus existing conditions. So we should be making an improvement from any water that is getting to those abutters or anyone down on Main Street. And just how the function of the culvert across Main Street works now too. Should excuse me, should alleviate if there's any problems now, should help that.
We want to make sure that that's so.
Yes. And then just to speak about some of the more major drainage issues brought up by MBL, the detention basin not getting the TSS removal. That's something we've run into a few times recently. And what we're going to do with the revision is change that to a pocket wetland, constructed stormwater wetland, which will have a permanent pool of water and wetland species planted inside of it. It's actually one of the highest treatment units you can put in. So it's generally what we've done with towns is put that in, and they're very happy with it. And it acts in terms of the rate, it works the same as the detention basin where it's just slowing down the water, but it gives you a higher treatment level. And that will solve that TSS problem. Another one of the major ones would be the setback from the infiltration basin, specifically the one up near Shalati White to the property line. So how we designed it and how we believe that the board has viewed this in the past, especially with the Stacy Lane subdivision that we did a few years ago, was a similar setback. We kept the working area of the basin, the inside berm down to the bottom, 50 feet from the property line. And that was acceptable for the Stacy Lane subdivision. And the regulation does not state that it has to include the berm. Obviously, it's up to your discretion, I understand that. But that's how it's been done before, and how we understand it is that we would be in compliance with this because the berm is not considered part of the working basin, and that's where the setback is too. That also is not defined. That's kind of a working definition that we've run with, and that has been approved before. Oh, the test bits in the infiltration basins being older, we certainly can do more test bits, it's not a problem. But I would like to point out that the infiltration rates that we're using are consistent for the infiltration basin in the back. We're using 1.02 inches per hour, which is consistent with a sandy loam, which is what was found in the older and newer test bits in that location. The one up near Shalati White Road, we have the old test bits stating that they are loamy sands, which uses a 2.41 inches per hour infiltration rate. And we have on lot 1, the septic test bits that we did were sandy loam. However, they did get a 10-minute and 20-minute perk rate. And I know this isn't apples to apples, because stormwater says not to use a perk test for your infiltration basin. But the 2.41 inches per hour that's used in that front basin, if you change the units 2 minutes per inch, it's 25. So it's still slower than what we're getting for any of the perk rates. And then when they point out that 65% of the impervious area must go to the infiltration BMPs, we check that That was something we missed. We are below that 65%, but I've already looked at a solution, and we're gonna be able to capture some more area from the road to get above that 65% number. And we have more than enough recharge volume when we do an adjustment area. That's the major items. All the rest of them are fairly minor to take care of, and we will take care of them.
I haven't been on the planning board as long as my colleagues here. I don't know how long, maybe 8, 9, 10 years, I'm not sure. But I've never heard as many findings by, I don't know, a factor of 4. And Mr. Daler mentioned the word careful, you know, that I think we're gonna give you some time to absorb all this and come back. And he advised taking some care with all of these corrections. And I think that's really good advice. And I second that. This, you know, our charge is, we know there's going to be growth and change in Westport. Our charge is to see that that growth and change protects what is the character of Westport. Charlotte White was an important person in the history of Westport, a woman of color who was a midwife. It's important never to forget her or to get her name wrong. And it's Main Road, not Main Street. And this cemetery, you know, where people are buried, shouldn't be erased.
Oh, we're not.
Well, it's erased here in the plan. So when you erase things, it's like you don't care.
We're providing a cemetery easement. We're calling it out as a cemetery easement.
Well,
We're not erasing anything.
I'm just looking at the plan where it doesn't say it. So it's a dense neighborhood with neighbors, and so if I'm worried when I see one thing erased, do other things get erased. That's what I worry about, and I come back to the word careful. If you pay attention to detail, it means you pay attention. You pay attention to one detail, and I get confident that you pay attention to every detail. If you pay attention to every detail, then I get confident that you think about things that are going to impact neighbors. If you don't pay attention to detail, then I lose confidence about things that impact neighbors. That's my concern. And so I just say that as a way of underlining the word careful, that there are a lot of corrections, and there may be many of them small, easy to fix, but they represent things that weren't done right the first time. Maybe in the quest of speed, I don't know. And so I just underline the advice of taking care.
Understood.
Thanks.
I just would like to point out again, we have not left off the cemetery from the plans. Maybe the sheet you're looking at doesn't say cemetery, but if you look here on the lotting sheet, we're calling it out specifically as a cemetery easement.
Okay.
And we're maintaining the existing access, the trail that goes through there.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, so just before I open it up to the public, I just want to, I was here for the first go-round, and one of the big issues was, is this going to affect my property? And I'm in a butter. And for instance, one of the drainage easements and catch basins is very close to other houses. And I remember it's probably some of the same people in the room that were there 8 years ago, whenever it was, that expressed very vocal concern that those things are pretty close to their house and pretty close to their septic systems. So when you have those kind of catch basins, when they infiltrate, are they going to raise the water table in the neighboring property?
No.
And so we need to make sure that they don't.
Yeah.
So
We're meeting all state and local setback distances between everything, including all the abutters septic systems, which we have from files from the Board of Health. We have all those locations. And I believe if you go to the grading sheet, you can see, I can't see what number it is, but the one that's closest to the front infiltration basin, we have the septic there in the back.
What sheet is your grading sheet?
Sorry, go up. Down one more, right here. So if you go to the infiltration basin near the front, near Shalati White Road, at number 50, we have the septic in the back. We made sure that we have the setback distance to that from the infiltration basin, as well as the well on the front left of the property. That's why you see that curve in the basin berm, to make sure we are 100 feet away from that, where we're infiltrating any water. And then as far as any impact you would see on the ground there, all of that water is either handled directly in the basin through infiltration or outletted to the, what will be the pocket wetland, closer to the wetland. So there's not going to be any runoff aside from what comes off the outside slope of that basin, which is far less than what's going there now. We show that in the drainage report, that we have a decent sized area that comes down and goes towards Shalati White, and that number 50, there's almost like a little bit of a swale on the property line there. So there's a decent amount of runoff that comes there now, and that's all being intercepted by the road and the drainage system and brought out to the wetland, as opposed to directly to the road and the abutter.
So can you point out on the plan there where the constructed wetland will go?
Yeah, if you just go down to that basin that's in the wetland almost, like in between the pockets.
This one?
Yeah, that's ultimately where the water is coming for most of the development. And then it's outletted there on the right side, the east side. You can see the very thick line. That's the outfall location that enters that wetland system, which would kind of come southeast toward the culvert on Main Road.
And that's the location of an existing pond? Or
No,
something?
it's just a small upland peninsula that goes through.
Because it shows on this map, just above that, there's a pond, right? Right there?
That's a natural pond there, yes.
Yeah, that's what I asked.
Yes. Oh, sorry, I thought you meant the location where the basin is.
No. No. So is that pond elevation higher or lower than? It's high. It's higher?
It's higher than the
Yeah.
basin.
Okay, so I'd like to open it to the public. Anybody have any questions? Comments? Yes, sir?
Yeah, my name is Rick Chandonese, 96 Charlotte Road. I want to make sure that the cemetery is gonna be well taken care of. Because the first owner of that destroyed some of the tombstones.
Headstones, but I know.
And now were they replaced or not? Does anybody?
It wasn't on my
anybody know?
radar. I don't know if it was. It's before anybody here except for me was around on the planning board. I remember it was written up in the paper
Yeah.
and, the Attorney General finally didn't do anything, but
Of course not.
of course not, but I don't know. I don't know. I can ask, Betty Slade, who
Mhm.
probably does know.
Can I ask the gentleman that just spoke?
I don't know if he knows, but
What's your plans on that cemetery?
So the plans on the cemetery are to leave it as is. I believe I actually had heard, I forgot about that, but I think I had heard that it was with a previous owner,
Right.
that there was some
Destruction.
destruction on it. And that's obviously a terrible thing. I could talk to the client and see if he might want to offer up some sort of restoration, but that's not a decision I can make.
Yeah.
He did.
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
There is, for your information, an active group in Westport that does restoration of historic cemeteries. And we'd be happy to put you or the client in touch with them if
Yeah, that would be
he
great.
or she is interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe Ribeiro, 100 Charlotte Way Road. I'm the abutter directly to the west. I'm just wondering how putting 6 or 7 houses within 600 feet of mine is gonna affect my well. What kind of buffer am I gonna get? Because right now it's all wooded. That's why I bought the lot. That's why I moved to Westport.
Can you point out where you live?
The one that's
In the
set
bottom left-hand corner there.
Down here?
Yep.
Yeah. The whole street.
So, I mean, I don't know how the aqueducts work around there. I just wanna know that I have water, you know? It's,
I would have the same question, so.
Yeah, I can kind of speak to that. Do you have any other questions first?
I do. What kind of buffer zone am I gonna have?
Sure.
So the questions go to me?
Oh,
I'll ask
okay, yeah. Yeah, the other concern was, what kind of buffer zone? It's all wooded. That's why I moved there,
Right.
you know?
And
A
do
lot
you,
of neighbors don't know me. I try not to make noise. I just try to keep myself in my little corner.
how do you access your house?
Right next
There's a little
to,
driveway
yeah,
here. It comes out and around, right?
correct.
It's a long driveway.
It is. That's why. And my other concern is during rainstorms, Charlotte White Road is a disaster because the catch basins all fill up. The way this land is pitched all to Charlotte White, who's gonna be responsible for that while it's in construction? Because I don't think that us as taxpayers should, have to pay somebody out to, to go out there
So
and start cleaning out catch basins.
Absolutely.
to answer that question, they have to file a NIPDES permit, which is a national, somebody help me, I don't know.
It's
what
through
it-
EPA.
Yeah. It's through APA, and they have to put silt fencing and everything everywhere, and they have to, submit a plan to the EPA for what they're gonna do. It's something that hopefully good construction people do all the time, but, and where you live, does it run onto their property from your property, or does it run on your property from theirs?
This is kind of a high point.
This is high, yeah, it's pretty much level.
It all comes
My
down.
property kind of goes down towards Charlotte White.
Mhm.
I don't think there's,
Goes right by my house.
yeah, I don't think there's anything that goes.
Yeah, it's a kind of a ridge here. And actually, right here at the property line, you've got a ridge that comes this way and goes that way.
So I don't see any roads near you. The only thing I see that you're gonna see is that house that's on the west side of the cul-de-sac. And I don't know how close your driveway is to the property line, but
So it comes, I mean, this isn't, his driveway is not surveyed in, so it
Yeah.
could be off a little bit. But it's probably 20 feet off the property line, the driveway.
Yeah, more or less.
And you've got a little bit of a tree buffer there. And then what we're providing for a tree line outside of that is probably 40 to 50 feet before any clearing. And then for the wells, you shouldn't have any problem with your well drying up if that's your concern. Because you're on the high point, and the groundwater is gonna be flowing away from you in every direction. So if they're pulling water from here, it shouldn't de-water you at all.
You
and
figured me being on a high point, I'd be the first one to lose water.
Well, you're probably drilled deep enough that that's not a concern, but the groundwater is not flowing toward you from this development. It's gonna be flowing that way toward the larger wetland.
Yep,
So we're downstream,
I understand that,
right?
yeah. My concern is my well.
Yeah,
That-
how-
That's what I'm
Yeah, we shouldn't- we
How
shouldn't
deep
be
is your
trying.
well?
Oh, off the top of my head, I think it's 350.
350. You never know underneath, but
Well, that's the thing, you know,
But-
isn't really a guarantee, you know, shoulda, coulda, woulda.
But it looks like there's plenty of water there, I mean, so.
Yeah, the groundwater is high, so
so,
fairly typical for most of
I
the
under-
Been
southeast.
here a hot summer.
yeah.
Yeah,
I understand the concern, everybody has the same concern all over Westport, but I can't say it won't, but I don't see how it was, but,
No, I appreciate it, thank you.
thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so,
You want a motion, Mr. Chair?
yes, we need to, how long, you got a lot of things to do. How long,
How often do you meet?
Twice a month.
Twice a month, okay. I'd say certainly skip the next one. And we're gonna have to get,
It's February 25th, March 11th, March 25th.
I think if we go 3 meetings out, it'll give us time to do our revision and have it back to MBL and hopefully get a response from them before the meeting.
March 11th, is that, or March 25th?
so we need 2 weeks before you know, to submit it to MDL and have them do their work. It has to be about 2 weeks ahead of the meeting.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, let's go. Let's go with the February 25th. Right, is that what you said?
February. Is February.
That's only 4 weeks, it only gives you 2 weeks to prepare the plans.
Understood.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a problem. No, I mean, I'm not saying these aren't major issues, but taking care of them isn't a huge problem. But I would like to know what you guys think about the setback on the infiltration basins to the property line. Because that would affect if we need to move the basins or not.
so if I understand your idea is that the setback should be to the water and not to the berm, to the edge of the,
Yeah, not the outside of the berm, because that's just an access way. It's not really where the basin's working.
so it should be to where the water touches the berm inside?
No, we're,
Inside the crest of the basin.
yeah, so the top
from the
inside,
top.
so that would be a foot lower in
Right,
elevation than where the water's gonna get to.
a foot higher.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
hopefully a foot higher. So, what do the planners think?
That's okay with me.
I'd ask our consulting engineer if they had any concerns about impact to adjacent properties, but if they were okay with it.
Okay.
And I know that the
Okay.
board's weighed that direction in the past, and the bylaw doesn't have a well-defined standard, so there's area to work with in there.
Okay, so we'll wait to have him tell us if it's gonna impact the neighbor?
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously you can get his opinion, that's fine, but I'd like to say that the important things that would impact in a butter are the setbacks to a well or a septic system. And those things are defined as the working area of the basin, and we're meeting those setbacks. The existence of a berm, just a built-up berm toward an abutter would have no effect. I mean, and especially since it's not going, we're not having the toe of slope directly at the property line, so it's not like that's even directly shedding water onto their lot.
So if the infiltration basin fills up in a really, really big storm, is it gonna go onto the neighbor's property?
No, there's an overflow that would bring it back to that, what will be the pocket wetland.
Okay, I really don't have a problem with it, but I'd just like Michael or Dia to
I don't have a problem with it
check,
either,
check.
but I think
check
it
with them
doesn't
and
hurt
see
to check.
what he thinks. And you can talk to him in a day or two.
Sure.
So I'm thinking we still should do March 11th, even though you think the end of February is okay, because I think with 50 things, there's gonna be something unpredicted that comes up that's gonna require a back and forth.
Sure.
And rather than saying, oh, we need to wait a week or continue it again, it's just better to build in a little
Yeah,
less time.
I
I'm fine
agree,
with that.
because it also takes up somebody else's time. So
Yeah,
if you, 5 days before the meeting say, I need a continuance,
Yeah. So,
we can't fill it with anybody else.
Nadine, what time? 6:15?
6:15 or 6:30, they're both open.
Yeah, so I would move, Mr. Chair, that we continue the public hearing for Francis Estates to March 11th at 6:15.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. We have a 6:30 public hearing, which is a little late, for Inheritance Lane, file number 23-023C, modification, MOD. Request to modify the definitive subdivision at Inheritance Lane to waive the subdivision bylaw requirement for underground utilities. The applicant is proposing overhead electric. The parcel involved in the modification is described as 4 Inheritance Lane, map 43, parcel 3-5.
Good evening, Board. My name is Jacob Dean, here representing the Dean family on behalf of this important matter here. Collectively, between my uncle, my father, my cousin, and myself, we own just under 15 acres off of Old Pine Hill Road, and it cuts all the way through to about Pine Hill Road. It's been in our family about 4 generations. Recently, we worked with some local engineering firms and divided up the land so us next generation could build a house and start a family on the land that we grew up on. We titled that, well, due to frontage requirements in Westport, in order to access our lots in the back, we had to install and pass with you guys a private laneway, which we entitled Inheritance Lane, and passed by the board June 13th of 2023. Since then, we've worked closely with Westport's third-party engineering firm, SW Cole. We've got the laneway constructed. We've got our grass swales in, our retention basin in, our weirs in, our overflows are all in and stable. We've met all the requirements, and we've gotten SW Cole to sign off on what has been done. We do have a surety still held with you guys for the remaining work, which is essentially just the electric. With that being said, we came to you guys for a lot releasal so I could start to build my house. My house lot was released by the planning board, and I have started to construct my single-family home. I do want to state that in no form are we developers. We all have skin in the game, and we're just trying to create our family compound. Originally, where we had it drawn up was underground. Like I said, we're not developers, so it sounded good. We started a timeline, and I tried to work the best I could with Eversource and local construction companies, trying to line up everything, in an orderly manner. But like sometimes timelines don't go the way you want. We were able to get a construction company down there relatively soon to construct and perform all of this, which they did a great job, and Derek was impressed on. But one thing was Eversource and the electric. It was really hard getting a hold of them, getting them to respond to emails, frankly, and getting them to come out. We finally did get a hold of some people, and through talking with people, above ground utilities and the amount of workers that Eversource has on crews for above ground utilities is far more immense than underground. So we got a hold of Eversource, and they proposed us an above ground utilities option, which is, it's here. Give you guys a couple copies. So essentially no lot lines change, all the setbacks are the same. The reason being also, like I said earlier, due to the timeline and not getting Eversource down there right away, our construction company got the roadway in, got the swales, the berms, everything's constructed. So at this point, my house is up. I need electric down there to keep going, and winter's coming. So we really don't want to go underground, mainly because we don't want to have to redo what we already did. I don't know if you guys got the packet of pictures that I sent in with this.
Yeah, we do.
But, the grass is all in. It took a long time for it to be established and mowed, and, final grading is all done.
And we're also concerned with the undermining of the existing asphalt driveways. There's 200-foot plus or minus of asphalt, 18-foot wide driveway that's in the easement. So it's gonna be hard to get the utilities underground without.
Along with a couple of real mature oak trees, which we're all from Westport, we love our oak trees. So, a couple of mature oaks would have to go down in order to do this trenching. Not to mention, we'd be digging up our swales and some of our roadway spillways and retention stuff.
So, usually with underground utilities, it's not the utility company that does it. It's usually an outside company that comes in and puts all the conduit in. And then they pull the wire, and then Eversource or National Grid comes and energizes it. I've been through that myself with what I developed. I know getting a hold of utility to try to come and do anything is incredible. I had a telephone pole right in the middle of the road I made. And it took 18 months for them to come out and move it. From the photographs, it was basically looking at the roadway and everything. Thank you for those. I don't know what you got for trees, but we all have a lot of oak trees and gypsy moss and dead oak trees and dead limbs, and they tend to take the wires down when they fall. And I don't know what people here think. It's not that big a deal, it's not that far. So it's, which lot are you building your house on?
So I'm building my house on lot 7, which is the single-family dwelling all the way down to the beach.
Okay, I got it.
And I'm not sure of this, but I think it's just for the two houses at the end, the one in the front could go either way, could it not? Because there's actually only gonna be,
Yeah, we're only pulling 2 house lots off of that.
The variance would only be subjecting 2 house lots. The lots that were wooded, was a wooded lot that we had to install the laneway to create frontage for me and my cousin's lot. So we're essentially asking for a variance to put in poles for the 2 house lots in the back.
So for house lot 8, how are you gonna get electric to that? Because the pole stops at your house.
There's not,
There's nothing past that. That's all wetlands.
It's a wood lot from there on in.
Okay.
It's considered an open space
It goes all the
wetland.
way down, all the way to Pine Hill Road behind the old Figuritos.
It's about 7 acres roughly. We took the 15 acres and kind of split it in half, left 15 for open space / wetlands, and took the other 7 and divided them equally amongst the lots.
And this house lot that's on the other side of your road, how do they get electricity?
The first pole Eversource puts in would be on his property.
I mean, this one here?
The one right on Old Pine Hill Road.
Yeah. Okay. And they're existing?
Yes. This house lot here is my uncle's house lot.
Yeah, that's my
Okay.
house.
And you get
I have
electric?
my own pole in the middle of my property.
He comes right off the street.
Comes right off the street?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then I go underground to my house.
What do the planners think?
So, I'll step in with this one. So, the planning board has been prioritizing undergrounding utilities in the past, and it is something that's called out in the town's municipal vulnerability plan, that utilities are one of the town's main vulnerabilities in extreme weather events. So installation of overhead utilities, even though it's a small segment, you know, the planning board more generally would like to see utilities undergrounded. And so that, you know, again, it's a small impact, but also can set precedent for other requests that come before the board. It also have a greater visual impact on the vicinity, having the overhead wires. That could be a concern for some abutters. And then in the letter that was submitted, although there is some additional soil disturbance that could be caused by the trenching work, they also have an operations and maintenance plan that the planning board had approved that should help address some of those erosion issues. So I think, you know, that it's a small request, but also, you know, the board has been prioritizing it. So, you know, I don't know how you all want to weigh that.
I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, from my part, since I agree with everything that you've said, and it's something that we're mindful of, that you know, all the outages and storms, you know, losing the wires and all that. I think I personally would vote to allow this to have overhead wires, and I do that not because what we're trying to do is not important, but essentially, if you lost the power, you ought to be the only ones who suffer. This is a stub that serves only you and the family.
And the abutters, I may comment on that, are all family. Off of Pine Hill Road, there's 3 house lots that could all see this project, which is my father, my uncle.
Yep. No, I know exactly where you live. I went and looked at this before, where you approved this before. So, you know, I think in this instance, given the nice job you did in the road, I would say, you know, get the poles in and finish your house.
Thank you.
M- Mr. Chair, I think I'm looking at these sideways pictures and trying to get my head getting dizzy. And the two comments, I guess. One, Mr. Chair, you said that one of the purposes is the issue of vulnerability and trees falling, and it looks that most of this driveway does not have the trees that would cause these overhead wires to be vulnerable to trees. Now, I may be wrong about that, but if you put overhead wires and then you go plant trees that would grow up over the wires, then you're going to reap what you sow, and we'll have no sympathy when the trees fall into the wires. And the regulation says that we can grant waivers for two lots or less. And while this is technically, I think, 4 lots, you're really running this for 2 lots as I see it. Lot 5, I think, could have a house in it, but doesn't appear to right now.
It's an open wooded lot at this time.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any intentions anytime soon.
Now, at some point you may do this. I love the name Inheritance Lane, by the way.
Appreciate that. Well, it was inherited
I'm
by.
sure there was a family dinner that came up with that one. Pretty cool. But you're really doing it to serve 2, so like Mr. Daler, I don't have a problem granting this waiver. The road looks really nice. When you said it was asphalt, I was surprised, but it's a nice surface.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to grant the applicant's request for a waiver as stipulated in section VG1 of the Planning Board's Rules and Regulations governing the subdivision of land to allow the installation of above-ground electric poles.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, board. Thank you very much for your time.
Good job.
Enjoy your compound.
You guys are welcome anytime. Thanks. Thank you.
Planners report.
No, we got the 645 here.
Oh, that's right, I forgot about that one.
Burke v. Twin.
Okay, next up is the 6:45 public hearing for 146 State Road, Burks v. Twin, file number 24-017 SPA-Major. The applicant is proposing to construct a 1,250 square foot garage addition to a 698 foot structure to be used for motorcycle restoration and required parking, in 6 required parking spaces with access drives. The parcel involved in the proposal is described as map 3, parcel 40-40A. The applicant is requesting to withdraw the application without prejudice.
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to make 3 motions if you want them.
Go ahead.
The first motion is I move to release the inspection funds of $2,275 plus interest for Plat 3, Lot 40 and 40A of Burke v. Twin.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Second motion, Mr. Chair, I move to close the public hearing for Burke v. Twin.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
And the third motion, Mr. Chair, is I move to grant the applicant's request to permit the withdrawal without prejudice for the Burke v. Twin application for site plan approval, major modification.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Now we're done with the public hearing.
Planners report.
First thing I have is a meeting to talk about a meeting that we had at UMass Dartmouth for the climate resilience plan that the Climate Resilience Committee is working on preparing. And we met with them to discuss what was a follow-up to an agenda item that we had discussed with the planning board, which is getting some assistance from UMD to work on the climate resilience plan. So what they would be doing is building on what has already been developed, doing some more data assembly, pulling together some nice graphs and infographics and stuff like that, pulling that into a nicely polished document. And that's what UMass Dartmouth would be doing. And they seem pretty receptive to that idea. We also talked with them about how the climate resilience plan needs to have a lot more public engagement associated with it. And so we had floated the idea of working with Serpide to help out with the public engagement for that document. And I've reached out to Danica Belknap over at Serpide. She's the head of their environmental division. They seemed interested in helping out with that. So it seems like we have a little bit of synergy between UMass Dartmouth helping the Climate Resilience Committee out with the actual content of the plan, and then with Serpide to help with the public engagement. And then in order to get some of the funds in place, at least with Serpide, I think we'll end up applying for an MVP grant, which is actually the next item on the planner's report. I'll hold off on talking about that in a minute. But where the funds are coming from with the UMass Dartmouth program, they have a bunch of funds through the Mayor's Blue Economy Initiative, and they're looking on ways to support municipalities in the climate resilience space. And knowing the work that Westport has developed and done at a grassroots level, which I think is pretty impressive that it's taken on the shape that it has. They want to support, they want to back the Climate Resilience Committee. Well, I'll say they want to tentatively back. We didn't like sign on a dotted line or anything, but still working on some of the details of how this will actually all work and coordinate between the different parties. But it was a good start to getting their help with developing the plan. John was there. Jeff Canton was there, the chair of the Climate Resilience Committee Outreach and Engagement Subcommittee, and Dio was there as well. So, John, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
I had originally reached out to Mike Goodman at Dean there, and he had brought in Jeff Canton and Naftali, I can't remember Naftali's. Nefelli. And there's also, they've got someone from SMAS as well, so it's a team of 4 professors. And they have a very large blue economy grant, several $1 million, as Michael said, to work with communities. But because Westport is really outside of the city of New Bedford, the only community that's been developing a resilience plan, we've said, hey, work with us. Your address is Old Westport Road. You should work with us. And so I think that the second meeting then included Jeff and Michael and Dia, and they are enthused about this. And we've said, if you do this with us, then it'll be a good example, and other communities in UMass Dartmouth service area once you finish doing with us, will say, hey, we want some too. And that will help spread this around Massachusetts. And they get that. And we pretty much had a handshake, but it's going to be formalized, and I think that would result in a public announcement, probably in the not too distant future, with leaders from the town of Westport, the university, and Serped, and maybe Bay Coast Bank, because I think, thanks to Jeff and Michael, we've got some funding from them as well. And I think the format would probably be a report from the Climate Resilience Committee that Jeff Canton is the editor of, that would be a kind of aimed at the general public, you know, this thick, and then a really deep dive at issues for policy nerds, that is this thick kind of thing, that would be done by professors and students at UMass Dartmouth, that you might think of almost as a really thick appendix, that gets very deep into a lot of the issues in Westport. That would be a companion volume that you put these two things together, and would be, I think, a really good set of documents, and that would be produced over the next year and a half or thereabouts. So I think this is very exciting, this partnership with UMD and the town of Westport in producing this. I think there's genuine excitement on behalf of the university to engage with us in that. I think it provides us with some real talent, and I think it's going to increase the quality and quantity of information out. And while I'm at it, I would say that I also, having watched nonstop news on Los Angeles and people talking about, you know, that are those fires, you know, driven by climate change. I went to talk to our fire chief, and I said, I'm not an expert in this, you know, could that happen here? And he said, yes, it could, because I said, you know, what I heard about Los Angeles was the reason LA fires are climate driven is you had a lot of rain, which caused a lot of brush to grow. Then you had 8 months of drought, and then you had storms and lightning and Santa Ana winds. I said, that sounds like us last summer, right? Wet spring, a lot of drought, winds. So I said, Chief, would you think about putting a tiger team together of your firefighters about if this could happen here, are there things the town could do? Are there things homeowners could do to mitigate against this? You know, things like putting gravel around your house. And he said that he was at a facility in Dartmouth, a store that had the same thing I had, this kind of plastic siding that's very attractive, low maintenance, but it's also fuel on the siding. And then he had mulch around the house, fuel. And because it was a coffee shop kind of thing, there was nothing but cigarette butts. He said he couldn't believe, you know, that this is he couldn't believe this shop was still standing. So I think, I said, well, if you could get your guys to write a 3 or 4 page description, that's a new committee for our climate resilience. And at any rate, I know he's working with you, Bob, on the public safety and infrastructure on that. So anyway, that was a great meeting that the 3 of us had with various representatives at UMass Dartmouth. And I'm very grateful that the university wants to take an interest in helping us out.
That's very good work, pulling that together. It's something we really need.
Yeah.
I think it's also good to get Serpent involved.
Yeah,
because
absolutely, the 3.
Because Serpent has just started a first ever environmental committee.
Oh,
And so they're going to try to do things that are regionalizations of whatever needs to be done, instead of just going to each individual town and saying, okay, what can I do for you? And to that extent, they're coming up with an idea for regionalization of MS, what is it called? MS4?
Yeah, it's our federal municipal storm sewer permit.
Right, which drives us crazy to do. We don't have the funding, and we have Mass Maritime and
We use contract with Kleinfelder right now.
yeah.
That could change, but they've been good to work with in the past. But yeah, we don't have a town engineer, so it becomes
I mean, and Serpent's clients, except for Fall River, New Bedford, and Attleboro, have nothing also.
Right.
I mean, I think it's great. So anyway.
So to bring it into item B on the planner's report, Jeff, Dia, and I talked with Courtney Roca after that meeting, actually, it was that same afternoon, about submitting a grant to the municipal vulnerability submitting a municipal vulnerability preparedness action grant to fund the public engagement piece of developing that plan. And we had described everything John had stated and I had stated, and she was really excited about the idea and was impressed that we're coordinating things with, with the university, and she thought it would be a really unique kind of unique document that a lot of other communities could kind of take and run with it and make it their own. So I think we'll be submitting that once the applications come open. I think it's late spring. And then the other one that we had talked to her about, which was something I submitted an expression of interest last year, which was looking at the flooding, stormwater, and infrastructure issues at the head of Westport, which is something that we've talked about in the past when we had submitted the application to the National Coastal Resilience Fund, which we didn't end up getting funding for. That was one area where we were going to use the funds, was to look at the flooding and stormwater issues at the head of Westport. And I think in the past year, there's been this confluence of a couple different conversations I've had with people that I think lends itself to look at the area a little bit more holistically. So I've had some discussions with some resident groups about their concerns with the speeding on Old County Road, with basically the hill of Old County Road being a slalom of sorts, and people will get clocked going far above the posted speed limit through there. So there's some traffic calming needs. And then the town also owns a fair amount of land on both sides. Well, it's the Landing Commission, but the town by extension owns a fair amount of land on both sides of the river. And it's not used for anything currently, except for there's the kayak launch on the side next to the River Alliance. So I think there's a really good opportunity to take the stormwater piece, the stormwater and flooding piece, combine it with the traffic calming, and look at the turning the town-owned land into a community asset where people could go and learn about climate resilience or stormwater, green stormwater infrastructure, those kinds of things. So I floated that with with Serpent, and they're really interested in partnering on that. And Courtney was excited about that idea as well. So unlike last year, I think there's a little bit more momentum to get a grant application submitted. If we do submit one for that, it would be through the MVP action grant, as well as I think if we're gonna look at some of the land use with how to use the landing commission land, and also managing some of the traffic issues. And if you're gonna create a public space, you'll need some sort of more formal parking treatment in the area. Then I think that would lend itself to a one-stop community planning application. So those are a couple things that are maybe on the horizon.
Well, there's also the Seaport grant,
There's the Seaport grant as well, yeah.
because they already paid for some of
Mhm.
the fixing of that,
Yeah,
that bulkheads.
yeah. Now, does the Seaport just fund planning activities? Because we could use it to actually,
They financed the construction.
Yeah.
yeah, 'cause I was gonna say, we could use them to actually move forward with the construction. Yeah.
And, I think you could get a fairly large grant from them. If it's, I don't know who's in charge of it now. It used-
Lieutenant Governor, she was.
Well, it used to be the lieutenant governor, is it still?
Still, yeah, she was right down at Bittersweet, so she's within a stone's throw of
She's, she's local.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, next is an update on the shared use trail at, we're calling it the Watuppa Connector. So here is, right now we're looking at two different concepts for the shared use trail. One concept is to run along the banks of South Watuppa Pond. So you see here, it's going to terminate, as we've discussed, at Old Bedford Road. These plans need to be updated based on my meeting with the consultant last week. We do need to show that we're going to have some treatment for the intersection to get across to Old Bedford Road, but that'll be added eventually. But the first concept is to run the bike path along South Watuppa Pond. It'll go behind the commercial buildings, along the rail right-of-way. And then behind that utility structure. And then it'll terminate at the current terminus of the Quikasham River Rail Trail. This is, I think, and then the alternative is to run it on Route 6. There's some profiles of it, but it would terminate in a similar spot. Instead of going behind this commercial structure, it would run in front of the commercial structure.
So is this body of water South Watuppa or North?
This is South
It's
Watuppa.
the north side of South Watuppa.
And would route around the utility structure and then continue to the Quikasham River Rail Trail, basically the same plan. The one that goes along the banks of the South Watuppa is I think is the preferred treatment, although we did want to have an alternatives analysis when we take this to Mass DOT. It is on the tip, so we're going to be talking to Serpent and DOT next month at the Joint Transportation Planning Group to continue to advance it.
Is that bank stable enough to support that?
It will probably need some boardwalk treatment. We need to do further engineering assessments to determine.
Are the rails still there?
The rails are still there. In fact, in some places, it's almost hanging over the embankment. So I suspect that a boardwalk treatment is going to be required. Obviously, it's going to be the more expensive option, but running it along Route 6 is not exactly,
So when you're
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
east, where do you cross Route 6?
the crossing right now is conceptualized at Old Bedford Road. That may change, but this is just the first segment of the shared use trail that we're designing. We're also applying to Mass Trails to design out the rest of the Cross Westport segment to
Right.
Dartmouth.
So the rail really goes
It crosses,
at an angle.
right, it crosses the road.
It crosses Route 6 and,
Yep.
and crosses the intersection
Right.
of Old Bedford Road.
Yep.
And then continues on between the two.
It kind of follows this footpath right here. If you can see the cursor,
Yep.
No, I don't see it. Oh, there
this,
we go.
where I just drew a blue
Yeah.
box, that's where the rail right-of-way follows.
Yeah.
We've talked to the LaFrance Corporation, who is the current lessor of the right-of-way from Mass DOT Rail Division. They're open to leasing out or modifying their lease for, let's get back to the section that runs behind their commercial structure. So it's kind of split, but it's right here, and then the next one's right here. They're open to exploring that. They did say that they don't think a shared use path fits the intent, the design image that they have for the frontage of their property. I think that's something we could discuss with them further.
Well, it's not the frontage, it's the back. I mean, it's,
Well,
It-
no,
it-
I was saying where the footpath is, excuse me. So this section right here,
yeah, well, that's.
running across where the hotel is.
Right, but there's nothing there. I mean, it's just the gully where the train tracks go through.
Yeah, I know that they have some concerns of liability, and that is something that we said could be addressed on the side where it runs behind that commercial structure. We can put up fencing there. I suspect they will not want any fencing running
No, I
across
don't
the
think
front
so.
of their property. So that's why the current concept is to continue up Old Bedford Road,
Yeah,
but that'll come with a future iteration
yeah.
of the project. This is the the critical link that the South Coast Bikeway needs to continue through Westport. So we wanted to at least get movement on this piece before we start designing out
So
the rest.
the preferred one is on the other side of that building that goes along the.
Right, yeah, on the backside.
Yep.
Yeah. I think there's a rowing group that is right where you have the printing, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
So there'll be more updates to come on that. Like I said, we're going to the Joint Transportation Planning Group to see which direction they
Okay.
might advise us to head in.
So have we made any progress on doing a master plan, or how we're gonna do that?
I think we'll, as you and I had discussed, we could apply for a one-stop grant to work with Serped
Okay.
to administer the master planning process. I think with all these different grant programs we have in motion right now, I don't have the capacity to lead a long-range planning initiative like a master plan, and I think we'll need some outside assistance to complete that. I
I
know that
agree.
that's something they do with a lot of communities, so they're
Well, we
well
have-
versed in it.
We have done it in-house before,
Yeah, which
but
was,
we have so many other things that are using up those same people that might have offered to help.
Mhm.
They're being used in other ways.
Yeah.
So, and how about the housing production plan? Has everybody read that?
I think it's fantastic. I
do
read it.
too, yeah.
I really think it's good.
I just had a few small things that,
Yeah. If you have,
They just need to explain what all this jargon means before you get into
yeah.
it.
Yeah, I mentioned, I thought there should be a glossary at the front.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, if you have any other smaller comments, feel free to send them my way. And I've given the Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Authority until the beginning of next month. Well, I guess until it would be after our next planning board meeting, which is the 11th, right?
Yeah.
So there's still time for comments.
So one of the things I would suggest that we consider including in it is a discussion of real estate taxes as a part of the affordability issue. And there is a way to reduce the real estate taxes for people with lower valued houses by using the residential tax exemption process, where you give everybody who has a residence, say, a 25% discount on the assessed value. So it lowers the assessed value on everybody. And then you have to refigure the tax rate. And those with the lowest value properties
Have a,
Hey.
relatively speaking, bigger percentage discount.
correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so here's a copy of what I found today, and had Nadine print it. She could print some more copies. She still has it, I think, on my email. But if you turn it over, several communities are already doing this. If you turn over that first sheet, there's a, so this, it is legal to do in Massachusetts, and several communities are already doing it. And with, the argument goes that somebody who has $1 million house, their property taxes are probably 3 or 4% of their income. And if you have a $400,000 house and you're on Social Security, it's probably over 50% of your, maybe not over 50%, but it could be 30% of your income. And if you refigure this, it would make the guy with $1 million house pay a little bit more, but the guy with a smaller house would pay a little bit less.
It's a great suggestion. I'll ask them to give a little bit of an overview of the residential tax exemption as spelled out in this document and other resources, and we can incorporate that. Yep.
If you go to that website that made that, it's a 40-page document that tells you all the different other ways you can.
Very nice.
Can I ask on the housing production plan, which again, I think is really excellent, what is SHI?
Subsidized housing inventory,
Subsidized housing inventory.
which is the
Good.
total number of
Well, it took
affordable
me
units.
about half an hour to find in there what that meant.
I mean, it hits you
After-
right in the first page, and then it's on every single page. And I say, I don't have like 50% of what's in this housing production plan, because I don't know what SHI is.
Yeah, I had the same problem. That's the reason for my, because there's other gobbledygook in there too, that
Mm-hmm.
planners know what the hell they're talking about, but the rest of us don't. So-
Yeah, Jim and I had discussed earlier how it needs a bit more plain language, and I think some of the color scheme needs to have a little bit more contrast.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
can-
the
because if you
graphs,
have-
there are too many colors that are too close to
Yep.
one another.
Yep.
Especially for old people,
Yeah. You want a motion to adjourn,
Please.
Mr. Chair?
please.
We have minutes.
Oh, it said not ready.
No.
Oh, they're not ready? Okay,
Yeah.
never mind.
So can I go to adjournment?
Sure.
Move to adjourn.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Brent Pereira, 26 Westport Lakes Drive. If the board wasn't aware that there's been recent activity at Westport Lakes Drive subdivision,
We are.
a skid steer with a brush type mower has been all over the road and caused, like, it seems like worse than what was there before. And the roadsides and in the proposed retention areas. My question to the board today is, has there been an official determination regarding the original subdivision approval status as active or revoked?
Have we heard from?
I don't believe it's not revoked. I mean, the planning board would have to formally rescind it,
Right.
because otherwise that would be a denial of someone's due process.
Right.
I
So
understand.
we figured that out since the last meeting, yeah.
You have figured that out?
Yeah.
So it's not revoked?
It's not revoked.
Without a
Without
public
a-
meeting
without
to
a
determine the
without a-
previous?
Without a rescission hearing.
I understand that. So is there a plan to have a hearing of that matter?
Do you know what the status? I know that there was some correspondence saying that they were going to go out there and finish. But that's a big statement, and I don't know what that means.
The question I have, the concern that I have is that because it's been so long and there's been so many expirations of different documents and things throughout history, it only seems practical that that the board would have to figure out or determine the status prior to allowing them to do anything, in my opinion, with the subdivision, because there was no, I would suggest, would the board agree that there is significant question regarding the original subdivision plan that needs to be determined on whether it is still valid or in revocation, as was stated in the last meeting, where there's some documents from way back that there potentially could have revoked itself because of the way the document was drafted. And I do understand that that document, the subdivision plan, was a good number of years prior to actual construction, but I would argue that if they didn't continue with the extensions through now, then I would argue that document potentially would be valid, and what it reads would be in occurrence.
So, Michael, if you could let us know, I think we continued the rescission hearing to a date certain?
We didn't open anything.
We didn't open it?
We and the board is very constrained in their ability to do a rescission hearing, because most of the lots have been sold. So they've all been mortgaged.
Right.
They would all have to consent to modify
Rescission.
or rescind the subdivision.
So what is happening?
We are now waiting for the consulting engineer to go out and do a site assessment. When we initially asked them to do a site assessment, there was a fair amount of snowfall, and they're going to wait until some of that snowfall melts before they can go out and assess the drainage basins. We're waiting for a renewed restrictive covenant on the lots associated with the Pine Ridge 40B. We gave them 45 days to submit to the board that document, as well as provide the board a construction plan on Westport Lakes Drive. And that expires, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's like March 1st or something like that they have to get back to the planning board.
Do we have any surety on?
We do hold surety on the road.
Yeah.
And we also hold covenant on some of the lots at the very northerly extent of Westport Lakes Drive that have not been constructed, where that section that has not been constructed yet. I think, having discussed it with the board in the past, that the approach is to try to reach out to the current developer to see if they're amenable to cooperate before trying to see what kind of creative legal means there may be to bring them into compliance.
Do you know what the surety is?
It's, I think, $123,000, which is another thing that we had asked them for, is, or that we're going to have the consulting engineer do, is give us a reassessment of what it would take to complete the road. That surety was taken out about 10 years ago. not going to be nearly enough to complete the roadway. And then we've also asked them that pending the consulting engineer's finding of what that surety should be increased to, they will also have to increase that surety that we hold up for the roadway.
So have we determined whether or not the large lot that the 40B is going on and the 2 lots on either side of that, whatever road that is?
Gulfview Lane, and that is Gulfview Lane, and it's still subject, well, that's the one that we have asked them to come in and submit the restrictive covenant for.
Because there is a restrictive covenant.
There is a restrictive covenant. It did say.
So they can't transfer the ownership of that.
Right, that's what we have communicated to them, is that they can't transfer or develop that property.
Because it's under covenant.
Right.
It seems like there's issue with when everybody speaks about past developers and current developers, which I think the assumption is from the planners that they're the same people. And
I've never said that they're the same people.
Okay, so my argument is that the new developer, Coastal Harvest, in the past meeting, but the previous meeting, there were letters sent out to Blue Cat LLC,
right.
and it appears in that document that it indicates that Blue Cat LLC would be the responsible entity for finishing Westport Lake subdivision.
Blue Cat LLC, excuse me, but Blue Cat LLC is the current owner of the subdivision road, as well as they are responsible for the infrastructure associated for stormwater management. So they are currently the ones responsible for installation of that infrastructure. That's why we hold the restrictive covenants on their land, as well as hold the surety. So they are responsible for the installation of it. They contract it out to other folks, I think that's fine, but if we're going to pursue any sort of formal legal action, they would be the party that would be named in that process.
So,
right.
So pardon because this thing is just swimming around my head. So when we got the surety, is that Blue Cat?
I don't know off the top of my head who that was.
So if I may, that seems to be the problem, because
right.
Blue Cat and Coastal Harvest, at that time, some of the managers of Blue Cat LLC were also managers of the Coastal Harvest LLC. And in 2015 through 2017, to which they came back to the town to try to get extensions to the original covenant,
right.
which had expired for nearly 9 years, which is my wholehearted argument, is that how does that go expire for so long, and then all of a sudden they come back in 2015, try to sell it to somebody else, which is still kind of sort of them, and then try to reacquire the subdivision, which all of the previous applications, the permits, all of that is since expired. All the wetlands permitting and everything else is expired.
The original applicant was American Links or something like that?
Still the same people.
Still the same
I would
people.
argue, and I could show you documentation that shows that. And there's much argument in the 40B process at the ZBA to whom is responsible and who is not responsible, and they have gone to great lengths to try to say that Coastal Harvest is the responsible entity, and Blue Cat is not. And if you would watch some of those ZBA meetings, you would gather a complete understanding on what they're trying to do as far as that process. I understand that that's not the same as what I'm here speaking about today as far as Westport Lake subdivision. The issue is that over time, there's been so much time where there were no certified as-builts. The retention areas were not certified, and there was no performance guarantee on those retention areas that they are now currently back in there, cutting up and chopping up. And my argument is that they shouldn't be doing that, because none of the original retention areas or any of the subdivision was one certified, finished, completed. Nothing Nothing is showed that the actual retention ponds that are there now, currently that they're now chopping up, are actually what's supposed to be there. And more importantly, that they were only touched one time since 2008.
So our next step was to send out our consulting engineer to investigate what stage the thing is today, and what would be required to put it into compliance. And I think that should happen before our next meeting, right?
It will. I would say that it would need to happen before that 45 days is up, which would be the first meeting in March. Would be the next time. The next time the planning board meets after that 45 days, which I think that would then be the appropriate time to report out on that.
Okay.
I will ensure that the consulting engineer, regardless of what kind of snow cover there is, goes out to the site and does at least some sort of preliminary assessment, because we do need answers on some of these questions.
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's no good to just surmise what's happening.
As I stated in the last meeting here, it would seem to me that in 2015 and 2017, when the covenant was extended, in my unprofessional opinion, that was done inappropriately because of the time that had passed on the original subdivision plan. And now there's been 9 more years where the current covenant has expired until now. And it just seems like the town is just kind of rolling over to potential mistakes that occurred through the last 17 years. And now they're just trying to make good on it and just let them comply. Where I would argue that they would be responsible to reapply for a subdivision plan and then supply engineering and everything that goes along with the subdivision to conform with the current standards according to the subdivision rules and regulations. And until then, they should not be allowed to haphazardly, in my opinion, just go in there with a brush cutter and just cut everything, and now it's worse than it was before.
Do you agree with that? That they should come back with a plan to comply with today's regulations, because they never finished?
I don't know how the board could force them to come back in and amend the plan.
Even though you and a couple other people have houses there, they're not in compliance. They never were in compliance with our regulations.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And so we need to talk with town council again and ask if we can do that, because to me, that makes sense. That if they're gonna fix it, they should fix it to today's standards.
The covenant extensions that the board is looking for currently through Blue Cat, is that relating to the Form O, this partial release of municipal interest, or is it the actual covenants that are specific to the ones that were issued issued in 2015 and 16? Because the confusion for myself is that they're 2 different things. And they do the Form O, the partial release of municipal interest, it does talk about the current lots or parcel that is particular to the 40B proposal. However, the covenant doesn't appear to separate the two. I'm under the understanding that they're 2 separate things, or they're 2 separate documents.
Well, I think the Form O was the release of covenant.
I don't have the forms in front of me. I mean,
So-
I think if we really want to get into an in-depth conversation, this would have to be a formal agenda item, but
Right.
I think we are addressing these issues, again, through having the consulting engineer go out there, and I think we would ultimately like to try to collaborate with the not collaborate, but to have the current developer cooperate with the town as opposed to, forcing a subdivision amendment. And I think this process has been rightly brought up, and I think, that
Yeah, but
there's been a lag from the town in pursuing any sort of relief for the people who live in that area.
So town council is pretty familiar with this, because we've talked to him quite a bit about it. Could you ask him whether or not to get to the point where we sign off and it's done, that it's done now to current regulations, because it was never finished before?
I can ask them that.
Yeah, please.
Well, it's not just an issue of the road, though, is it? It's where the lots developed to what was required and agreed to. So it's not just the road. And if they weren't, what is our course of action?
Well, also the stormwater controls that we have are different today than they were 20 years ago. So-
Right, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be beneficial to have them apply at,
And
update
so-
things to
and so
current
if we
standards.
have
I just
to
don't know what the legal
put
method.
that as an agenda item after our consulting engineer reports back on whatever date you're saying he's gonna report back, then that gives time for town council to think about it. But it's an interesting question about if a developer ignores what the requirements are, if a developer does nothing over time, what is our recourse? Do permits expire? Do violations left unpoliced? Is there a statute of, what's our recourse?
The facts are different than the developer didn't do anything. So I don't know when, but sometimes there was a subdivision that approved this way. Whatever that was, 20 years ago, whatever that was. And they built something. Whether it's in compliance or not, they built something. And they got release of lots and they built sold a few lots, and they built a few homes. That's my understanding of the way the situation is now. Then the question really comes, I think we can force them, whether we seize as a surety or we can force them to comply, whatever the regulations were 20 years ago, whatever the conditions of that approval was, we probably can enforce that. The idea that we have new stormwater standards and all that stuff, can we enforce that? I don't know. And if we want to enforce that, I think the question is, can we actually rescind the old subdivision? Now that it's partially built, it was started, all of the lapses and stops and starts and perhaps errors of what prior boards have extended things, whatever that is, what is the liability to the town if the planning board undertook to rescind the old subdivision and force them to file a new subdivision? That's the real question. Does the planning board have the legal right to do that once the subdivision is started?
Yeah, I believe they can rescind it, but if, as we found out with Marcotte, if they have, if anybody has gotten a mortgage on any of the property,
Yep.
then the mortgage holders have to agree. And I can't imagine a mortgage holder for your house or somebody else's house
I'm saying,
saying,
oh, yeah,
okay, there's no subdivision.
you know,
Forget
that property has no access any longer.
Right.
If we rescind the subdivision, your home doesn't have access. You've lost your right to get to your house if we rescind the subdivision. And you know, I don't wanna take that step lightly. I know the road's there, I know you drive on it, I know all that, but if, for instance, you decided, I wanna sell my house, then the buyer's attorney's gonna say, listen, there's no legal right to get to that lot.
Yeah, so I think what I would suggest is that we will by March 1st, we have a meeting on March 1st? Or?
I don't know the March planning board
This is
meeting,
a
but
conversation we should have with town council.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, that brings up another point. I mean, the town council currently was the planner at the time of the extension in 2015, 16, and 17. And I would argue that that was done inappropriately. And it seems like the town planner has a very keen interest on this project because of that. And it seems like,
You're talking
I
about-
mean, what is the
you're talking-
litigation potential?
No, I think.
You're talking about the town administrator.
Town administrator, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
the town
and
administrator.
not the town
Currently
council.
was the town planner.
Yep.
I'm speaking, so it's not the town council and it's not the town planner, it's the town administrator.
Yes.
Who was the planner at that
Yes.
time. And, so what I'm going to suggest is that so that we can have a robust discussion about this for one of our next meetings, is to talk with Michael and get it on the agenda, because it's really, I'm allowing it tonight, but it's inappropriate for the 48 hours to, you know, because we know about this, it
it's an
isn't a
ongoing-
48-hour thing,
right.
so, but please, talk
It'll-
with Michael. If
it'll
you
be-
have papers that you'd like him to look at and compare with the Form O and the release of surety, or not release of surety, release of the lots, please make an appointment and go talk with him so that we can get all the stuff in front of us for an agenda item that we can talk about, and perhaps even get town council involved.
I would agree with that. However, I would state again that I would say that somebody from the town should require them or require them to not continue to do what they're doing until those things are ironed out. Because of my previous argument that nobody really knows what was built, because it was never certified, there was no there was nothing. There was an engineering survey that went out by Tibbetts at the time of, I don't know, just prior to the sale to
2015 or
Coastal
16.
Harvest.
Right.
And again, still they didn't comply with what that document said, and it's now been 9 years later. I understand that revoking the subdivision puts me in peril.
Yeah.
However, I would argue that the town would maintain some responsibility for not keeping up with the subdivision since its inception, up until now, where it has slid through the cracks for as long as it has.
So we're gonna consult, we're adjourned, by the way, because we moved and voted to adjourn. We took this, which is not on the agenda, you suggested this, I think that's the 6th time you've suggested it. Our hearing is good, and we are going to consult with our town council, which we've said several times. And we're gonna put this on an agenda so people know we're gonna talk about this. So I think we're adjourned.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.